This is from the Institute of Public Affairs for the 9th of May, 2019. And it has to do with labor's push for a national gender center is informed by radical academic philosophies and not facts. Now, I thought this was important, especially for those living in Australia, where I live, here in Australia. And if you live in the States or somewhere that following this same kind of nonsense. So let me share this with you. Should it be elected on the weekend of May 18th? The Labor Party has promised to offer free sex change procedures, set up a taxpayer-funded national gender center, and appoint a new commissioner for sexual orientation, gender identity, and intersex issues. This is completely in keeping with the party's fixation with social justice. To be clear, when the Labor Party talks about social justice, it doesn't mean things like equality before the law. Oh no. The equal claims to rights of citizenship or free speech, which it clearly considers to be outdated and antiquated ideas which should be consigned to the dustbin of history. No, when the Labor Party talks about social justice, it means the complete rearrangement of society so that there is no privilege, no hierarchy, no difference. This has everything to do with engineering and very little to do with justice. One of the ways it proposes to fulfill the party's self-proclaimed mission to reshape Australian society in its own progressive image is to get society to a point in which we are genderless, androgynous mass. It genuinely believes that a genderless world in which there are neither men nor women, boys nor girls, will be far better. Because if there are no men, women, boys, or girls, there can be no difference between us. Yeah, that's what it says. And if there is no difference, there can be neither oppressor or oppressed. Presto, you have a world of perfect equality. Right. A reading of the party's 320-page manifesto entitled A Fair Go for Australia, which you can download. Go to their website, you can download it and go through it if you want to. Reveals Labor's preoccupation with all things gender. Here's some examples. The word gender is mentioned 148 times, intersex 55, transgender 35 times. Homelessness only 45, immigration 24, and red tape 3. Perhaps they are a little more important, but not to the Labor Party. We can see where Labor's priorities lie. Many would have undoubtedly been through the university system where they have absorbed the most postmodern radical gender theory has been peddled in the humanities and as unquestionable orthodoxy since the 1960s. It is evident from the manifesto that its authors have clearly been worshiping at the altar of the high priestess of gender theory. Let me go on. There is no doubt that they will also be accolades of Judith Butler, who decided in 1990 that the perception of gender had become outdated, posing instead that gender is nothing but a performance. Take the University of Sydney's Gender Studies blurb, quote, the Gender Studies major, end of quote. It claims, and I quote, encourages you to think beyond common sense ideas. Common sense, who wants that? About what it means to be a male or a female, and to recognize instead the many different ways that people embody and experience gender, end of quote. Meanwhile, over in the Women and Gender Studies Department, WGS, at the University of New South Wales, the department boasts that its, quote, scholars are outward-looking, politically engaged, and theoretically innovative. We aim to make WGS an area of study that has the capacity to explain the world and perhaps even change it, end of quote. That's what's scary. And by love, they are doing their level best to change it. They've changed the Labor Party. The Greens are already wacko. By way of example, last year the Herald Sun reported that in Victoria, the Manningham and Melbourne City Councils were going to remove all books and toys deemed to enforce gender stereotype from their kindergarten, schools, and libraries, such as Naughty, Winnie the Pooh, Thomas the Tank Engine, and Barbie. These are all going to be discarded on the grounds that they were not gender neutral enough. Unsurprisingly, the source of this madness, and that's what it is, madness, was the Australian National University, which at the Council's request wrote a report called, and get this, Building Children's Resilience Through Respectful and Gender Equitable Relationships Pilot Project. It's a mouthful. The upshot of the document was that it claimed that children as young as 2 were not only guilty of stereotyping, but that they were also developing signs of gender bias. Gender bias. But wait, there's more. Research also suggests that stereotyping and prejudice along race and gender lines can be observed in children as young as 3 and 4 years old. According to the report, toddlers who are barely out of nappies and who are just coming to grips with their existence are apparently guilty of stereotyping and gender bias. Thankfully, though, the report's recommendations were not taken up by the councils. One of the government closest to the people, thankfully, didn't take it up. In Tasmania, the Greens and the Labour Party have already passed a bill to remove gender from birth certificates because they believe it to be a form of discrimination. In South Australia, the birth certificate options are non-binary, intermediate, intersex, and unspecified. The visionaries at the Australian Bureau of Statistics have decided that in 2021 census, Australians will be asked about, quote, non-binary sex and or gender identity, sexually orientation. Now, these are examples of just how wide the divide is between mainstream Australians and the political elite. It is clear that the latter believes that one of the most pressing needs for mainstream Australians in 2019 is to establish a national gender center. What a waste of money. What is of great concern as the election looms, and Australians should be rightfully concerned, is that the Labour Party, if elected, will impose this radical gender theory to society, whether society wants it or not, and at society's expense. And it will be an expense. You talk about mental health. There will be problems galore down the road. As we get to Election Day, a week from today, don't vote Labor and don't vote Greens. I won't tell you how to vote, but don't vote those two. Thank you for listening.